All right, you gloriously miserable accursed. It is Friday, February the 14th, Valentine's Day. Hello, Deb. Hello, Jordan. Happy Valentine's Day.
Same to you,
Happy
David.
Valentine's to you too, David. And Scott.
David left me out of that.
Well, Scott, we have a different kind of relationship that doesn't lend itself to these kinds of occasions, but
I hate Valentine's Day. It is just an invented pretense by flower shopkeepers and Hallmark card writers, some commercial plot to force us to purchase things at the last second in a sweaty frenzy and to believe the absolute myth that there's such a thing as romantic love. So I'm down on the day.
Scott, maybe Deb and I could just offer you a little helping hand in your personal life. You're going to want to go out and get the overpriced flowers today.
yeah.
David, let me know where to send them.
I've hated Valentine's Day, actually. I don't hate it, but I hated it in elementary school when I would write unrequited Valentines to other girls in the class, and I wouldn't get Valentines from the girls I wanted to get, or maybe from anybody. Sad. I had a sad childhood.
Grade 3, I'd write. Yeah, I had to do it one to everybody in the class. That was my mom's rule, right? And so I would just write Happy Valentine's Day to everybody, except for Lynn Green. Or I would write like, I believe it was W.B. Yeats who said, "I love you for yourself alone and not your yellow hair." And nothing. No return address. Zip. Zero.
David, do you have a podcast psychiatrist that we can include in our show? Man, this is heavy.
I know it is, but that's what people come to this show for, Deb. This is what you get. This is what you
to
get
feel
on
better
podcasts.
about themselves.
The deep insights.
You don't get this
as to
on
what
radio.
drove Scott and David into political work.
I listen to Scott and David, and I feel so much better about my life.
Well, that is a public service right there, and we do it for thousands. Used to be hundreds, now it's thousands. All right, today's Relay Strategies polling is brought to you by Enbridge Gas, reliable, affordable natural gas to heat your homes and power our economy. So, boy, is it exciting today. 49 Ford, 24 Crombie, 19 Styles.
Isn't she up a bit, Jordan?
I'll take it. She's up. She's up. I'll take that.
Is Magic Mike still hanging in there in double digits, or has he slipped to 9?
He's 8, I think, today.
8. Take that, Green Boy.
Healing away to Marit.
There you go. It's all happening, friends.
It's all within the margin of error of our tracking. It's just like chicken along like nothing.
This entire pod has been within the margin of error. The margin of error. The statistical likelihood that what you'll hear today is precisely what you heard yesterday is plus or minus 3%.
Well, only 19 times out of 20, so we could still surprise Scott. Could be a rogue episode.
True.
So yesterday, the NDP candidate, Neglinton Lawrence, withdraws because she says it's a two-way fight between the Liberals and the Conservatives, and she wants the Liberals to win. She wants to get out of the way. So she withdraws. Like she really meant that shit because she waited up until the deadline to do it. Like she jammed the
Yeah, I have thoughts.
Yeah.
So it's not the first time that I've seen this happen on campaigns. This is something that has happened before. Certainly, I know of it in federal races as well. From time to time, particularly when it's close between the NDP and the Liberals, you will see a candidate or two drop off after the cutoff with an equally sort of puzzling rationale and letter. And I think, like, frankly, probably hat tip over to the Liberal war room. And it's definitely not great. That's for sure. Distraction and to not have a candidate in that riding is not great. But I was also interested to see yesterday, it looks like the Liberals are not running anybody in Windsor West. Did you guys see that too? Like not standing anyone at all.
Well, they had a candidate who apparently the party says had a family emergency or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Liberals don't have a candidate in Windsor West.
So down
Windsor's not what it used to be for the Windsor's not what it used to be for the Liberal Party. I'm actually at Paul Martin's house in Florida right now, and there was a day when Windsor was locked down Liberal territory.
I was going to say, is he occupied? Does he want to? Maybe we could sneak him in. No?
Yeah, well, maybe if we recorded at some time other than 6:30 in the morning.
Fair enough.
So I need to ask Jordan. So is there a backstory? Because I couldn't tell from what you said. Is there a backstory on this?
I don't know what the backstory is in this particular case, but I was just saying that like I have seen this exact pattern happen in the past before, which makes
with a backstory.
Which makes me suspect that, these things don't tend to happen accidentally. There's often, I think, a helping hand from another party involved.
This is not altruism, is what you're telling us. I
am suggesting that, that would be unlikely. So
I still don't think, Jordan, you can stop beating yourself up about it. I still don't think it's the news of the day. The NDP weren't going to win Eglinton Lawrence anyway. No. So, nor were the Liberals going to win Windsor West. So it's largely of no consequence. But is send them right to Sparky of any consequence?
No.
I mean, this is it.
I don't think it is.
This is Doug Ford being the biggest threat to Doug Ford again, right? Like, I think that there were actually two big pieces of news yesterday, and they were both out of Doug Ford, from Doug Ford's campaign, harming his own campaign. Sparky was one, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but the Washington video and the ethics complaint that it spawned was another.
Scott, tell us again why the Liberals can never have nice things. Why isn't Sparky a big deal?
Because people who aren't in his voter coalition believe all the badness that comes from that already. People who are in his voter coalition cheer. They do want to make certain that some 14-year-old who made a mistake goes and dies in a Florida prison. They think that would be wonderful. And so I don't actually think it's that consequential. And in a weird way, and I know people hate it when I say this, but this just reinforces Doug Ford's brand. So it's a screw up, it's a distraction, but it's not one that causes harm in my view. And I think it's more likely to be a potentially day-burning distraction for the Liberals. Now, you've got the Northern debate today, so that really won't be allowed to happen. So, but like if the campaigns were to jump on this and try to make a day out of it, it would be a blown day in my view, because many things are true. And the fact that he shouldn't have said these things and done these things and released this video. But if that true thing doesn't actually convert votes to you, then it doesn't help you. Pick the thing that's true that helps, not the thing that's true that doesn't help.
Hey, Deb, I don't 100% agree with that, what Scott just said, especially when he's talking about Ford's voter coalition, because Ford's voter coalition is 50% of the population right now.
Yeah.
So that is containing a lot of people that are not rock-ribbed conservatives. And presumably a number of people that don't like the premier idly speculating about the electric chair.
So I think he was just doing it to help me out with our do-over segment, because I haven't had a lot. So I
you have a buffet today.
I do today, and the premier is just helping me out. I think the video is different than the Sparky comment. What makes them similar is that, as we've discussed, if Doug is too much Doug, he does run the risk of trampling on his own campaign. And so I don't deny that there is a challenge there. And, as he likes to say, buddy, tighten up a little bit. That's all he has to do. But where I agree with Scott is if the crap and corruption stuff had been working, Marit Stiles wouldn't be in third place, because that really has been her entire time as leader, which I think Jordan is right around 2 years now. And her first year, she had clear runway without Bonnie Crombie, without any leader of the Liberals, and it didn't work for her. It didn't lift her off the page. So I do, where I agree with Scott is I think it is a distraction. It doesn't help move the numbers either against Doug or for either Bonnie or Marit, and they should leave it alone.
You know what the sad fact of that is, Deb? That people actually do, by and large, believe, I won't use corrupt, but, we've got 60% or more agreeing that Doug Ford primarily wants to help his buddies, right? But I think people believe that of all politicians. They may believe it's slightly more of him, but it's not really a distinguishing feature.
Yep.
I think that, it's part of what is necessary, but not on its own sufficient, right? For the NDP, also for the Liberals, in terms of making a case against Ford. Like, you have to go in and wedge those spaces open, and the ethics stuff is the softest one, and that's why I thought it was sort of interesting yesterday, because you had the Liberals going a little bit more on the Sparky comments, and then you had the NDP. They filed the complaint with the ethics commissioner about the PCs used footage from the Washington trip, put up a little video. I think it was just on X, and then it ended with the PC logo and slogan. And so they ended up pulling that video down. And I think that one to me was actually probably the more useful of the errors that the Ford campaign made yesterday, because it really did underscore the criticism of the whole trip. Like, it plays into the idea that he did do that trip literally just to almost create those images to be used in a campaign, to be used for partisan reasons, not sort of for the good of the province. And so the fact that they also pulled it down, as Tom Mulcair would often like to say, sort of circles the stain.
But wait a second, Jordan. I mean, like,
but who cares, Jordan?
To Deb's point.
Yeah.
To Deb's point. I mean, surely this video is the least of Ford's ethical,
sure, but
errors, whatever you want to call it. I mean, what kind of person is sitting back there going, "Okay, I was okay with the green belt, and I'm okay with the spa, but this is a bridge too far." This video.
I agree, but what it does is it refreshes it in the current campaign context, where there's something in the media where he's already talking about spending government money, potentially parts of that trip were funded by the government, that's being used maybe in a campaign. So I think it keeps it in the news. I think, look, it's an opportunity. I think that the parties were right to take it. They have to keep making that case, as well as doing other things that are more in the proactive space. They have to keep taking that attack to Ford. And it is one that people believe, right? So even though we're not seeing movement now, if we were to see movement in future, continuing to wedge on those things is going to be necessary to create space for that.
So movement in 3-4 weeks, Jordan?
I mean, hopefully a little less, say maybe 2.
But David, I think you put your finger on it when you talked about what's the distinguishing feature of this allegation, of this suggestion about ethical lapse. And my honest opinion is that this issue set will drive Ford from office at one point. Like, I don't think this is inconsequential. I think this stuff is going to blow up on him. I think that green belt, and when actual charges end up getting laid, my bet is they will eventually. I think that will then, as an external event, force a level of scrutiny and discussion that will then create space for a bunch of other ugly stories that will come tumbling out. And that's my guess. And then there will be a searing focus on that will tumble and feed itself. So my bet is there's big trouble ahead on this eventually. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my guess. I don't think it helps in the current context. I don't think it can be harnessed in this current context where you say, look, this is just another indication of this and this and this and this, and see, you have to have this concern. Because as you said, all that, absent that external catalyzing factor, all we have is, it isn't that people don't believe these negative assertions, it's that they do believe these negative assertions. They just believe them of everyone and anyone that's involved in politics. So until there's something more precise and specific around Ford, I don't think that it can be weaponized in this campaign. And I think it's more likely a distraction for the opposition parties as they're tempted to piss away precious hours and minutes on it.
And let's be clear, we need to say unless there is, as opposed to until there is.
I don't know about that.
I don't think that story arc is finished on the green belt.
I won't repeat them here for defamatory reasons, but I know a couple of stories.
Last week, we heard from the Ontario Real Estate Association, or OREA, about how the Canadian dream of home ownership is slipping further out of reach for everyday Ontario families due to the lack of housing supply and prohibitive government costs driving up home prices. OREA's provincial election platform, A Home for Everyone 2025, offers ideas on how to rescue the dream of home ownership by focusing on 3 priority areas. Number 1, better consumer protections by eliminating the backlog at the Landlord and Tenant Board and mandating equal treatment for diverse families under the Condo Act. Number 2, building 1.5 million homes by 2031 by ending exclusionary zoning to allow 4plexes province-wide and increasing density near transit through building conversions. Number 3, lowering the cost of owning a home by limiting municipal development charges and allowing a multiple ownership model for housing options like duplexes and triplexes. The housing crisis won't be solved overnight, but OREA believes the next provincial government can take important steps towards restoring the dream of home ownership. For OREA's full election platform, head to orea.com/platform. Okay, so let's set up the debate. the two debates that are coming up. Ford's imperative for the debate. Deb, start.
Look like a premier, don't take the bait.
What does that look like?
I mean, if I were playing Bonnie in debate prep, I would take, I said this yesterday, take personal stories, accuse him basically of killing people through his lack of support for healthcare, and just needle him and needle him and needle him. And he can't take the bait. He has to be able to pivot to, listen, we can't have any of this unless we have a strong economy, and our economy is at risk because of Donald Trump, and I'm the only one who can actually protect Ontario. He has just to find a way to continue to pivot off the issues that are going to come at him from the other three, and right to why he has this campaign going in the first place from his perspective.
Right.
If he starts to show any irritation, any frustration, it's not good. He's all about strength.
To Sparky with you, Bonnie Crombie.
I'm surprised he didn't say train station. The Yellowstone reference.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry. You're too deep into bro culture for me. Sorry.
Yellowstone? I thought everybody watched Yellowstone. You're really a downtown latte sipping
I don't
liberal
know.
if you're not watching Yellowstone.
I tried. It's hard to. It's a little stretched in terms of credulity, don't you think?
Says a guy who's a fan of Marvel Comics.
Man, we digress quickly, don't we?
Yeah.
Could be.
Jordan,
where are we? What is happening?
How many times have you traveled outside of Earth's atmosphere? There could be rays. Things could happen.
When I talk superheroes, I talk Gumby.
Stumbled into a time machine. What's going on? Okay.
Jordan, what does Styles have to do on Monday, today and Monday?
Yeah, she needs to differentiate and connect. That's, I think, her biggest imperative, is that this is her moment to lift off the page, to connect with folks in Ontario. I think she is, as we talked about a lot, she's very relatable. The camera does love her. This is a venue that she can do very well in, and I think in a lot of ways better than Crombie.
Who's her opponent?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Both. Her opponent is both.
Well,
so she needs to be, it is hard, but she needs to be being seen to be taking the fight to Ford, but also having some elbows in the bag for Crombie as well, to knock her off her game, and also make it clear that, and I'm going to talk more about this in the redo, but that some of the situations that people in Ontario are dealing with also have their roots, in Liberal governments. So there will be a bit of a dual purpose there for her. But the most important thing, I think, for her is making that emotional connection with people who have not yet seen her, and differentiating herself from Bonnie. That is the biggest thing that she needs to do there.
So let me say something, and the three of you tell me whether you agree with it or not. There's a whole lot of people out there that don't want Doug Ford to win the election, some of whom are voting Liberal, some of whom are voting Green, some of whom are voting NDP. They will not want to see the Styles or Crombie attacking each other, because they will want to know that these people are more committed to defeating Ford than they are to jockeying position ahead of themselves. And if you look like you're playing for second, those voters aren't interested in you, because they want somebody that can finish first.
Yep. You can. The only way to do that, and it sometimes confronts Liberals, it often confronts NDP leaders in debates. But in my view, the only way to win that kind of contest is not a two-way fight. You have to eclipse the other leader in taking on the front runner. That has to be, you have to push the other person out of the frame without ever throwing a punch at them. Just eclipse them.
It has to be done very precisely. And it can never be the same type of attack that you would use on Ford or a front runner. It has to be very soft and very short, and almost like a little, it's about pushing them out. It's being about a little bit dismissive, and then moving back onto Ford. It's very challenging. Yeah.
Scott, what advice do you have for Bonnie Crombie going into these debates?
Well, I think it's pretty straightforward for her. And we talked about this actually in abstract terms yesterday. And we talked about the Mike Harris campaign in 95. The candidates are constantly confronted in these leaders' debates with the choice between what I call box or soapbox, right? Do I box? Am I pugilistic? Do I just run at my opponent and try to win a clip where I look like I'm fearsome, Rocky, and I'm slamming them with blows? Or do I use it as a soapbox to just try to peddle my wares to the public and try to ignore everyone else and create some connection? And I think it's 80% soapbox for Bonnie. I think she needs to make the moment of the debate about healthcare. And ideally, as you were mentioning yesterday, David, it isn't just capturing people's agreement that healthcare is in need of repair in the province of Ontario, but to somehow reach above that and say, I actually am the person who you can trust to be more motivated than anybody else, who will make things go from one pile to another pile. And that pile is entitled fixing healthcare. And I'm going to do these three things, not do those three things. That's going to put a greater focus on it. And I think if you can do that, then maybe you can actually take some of those small numbers we've been seeing in the polling and put them into your column as votes.
Deb, in terms of debate performance.
Yep.
I'm an arrogant person, and I believe that I could, in a debate, fucking take Doug Ford apart. But I believe at the end of it, people would think I was an asshole.
Okay.
How important is likability?
Well, I think obviously you're talking about the other three, not Doug, to start with. I don't
people that when you're
think-
criticizing,
Yeah.
attacking.
Yeah.
How important is it to remain somewhat a likable, positive person through that?
So I think it's maybe the other side of the coin on that, David, which is don't act in a way that turns people off. So I don't think it's likability. It's just make sure that people don't come away with a bad taste in their mouth. Full disclosure, I played Andrea Horwath in the Premier's prep in the last election, which was a real stretch, but it was an interesting exercise.
Because you're a little
me.
bit to the left of her.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we welcome you anytime, Deb. On it. It's okay.
My goal was to get into the Premier's, we talked about this yesterday, get into the Premier's physical space, like literally move closer to him and make him uncomfortable and really go after the repercussions of his policies in human terms, which is what I think, both Bonnie and Marit have to do. And my entire purpose was to just get under his skin. And yeah, there was a risk to that in terms of, as Andrea Horwath, not being seen as likable. But I did think it was more important to push him off his game than to highlight myself. And I think that stands today, too, because of the numbers, or today and Monday. I think their best hope as opposition leaders, get your message out, make sure that the people you've got, you're holding. But I think your best hope is to not bring your numbers up as a goal, but to bring the Premier's numbers down as a goal.
Yeah. Can I throw out two other quick thoughts, like a don't and a do? Don't blow your good lines today on the Northern debate. Like if you're a leader and you've got and you have strategies and lines and runs. When we were doing debate, I always call them runs. What's my run on healthcare? What's my run on the taxes or whatever? Don't blow your runs in the Northern debate. But do use the Northern debate to dress rehearse the physicality of it, because it's a different kind of debate. It's more of a bear pit, but you are nevertheless standing on a stage with these other leaders and you get a feel for how to interact with them. And I think that's something you can use in Northern debate and then go back to scratch on the weekend and go, I thought it would be like this, but then when I was actually standing and I turned, I realized I was turning on Ford in the wrong way, or I looked too hot, all that stuff. So you can use it for learning for that. And the last thing is something that you brought up, David, which is when it comes to likability, both Crombie and Marit have to be concerned the Schreiner doesn't steal some vote, because we've seen before that he has met the likability test in these debates. And sure, that's only 5%, but 5% is the fucking world if your styles or a Crombie. So you can't allow that guy to do what you do, only do it better and do it as a dude, and then suddenly he wins votes for it.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, I think one of the things too that is interesting sometimes is some of the gender dynamics within the debate. So this is a bit of a trap for Ford as well, is that if Marit or Bonnie or Mike Trenner are able to get under his skin, it will appear different if he's speaking back with any sort of anger or any sort of like really strong reaction. It'll look different if that's towards Marit or Bonnie than it would towards Mike, right? So that's a dynamic that for sure they're going to be aware of and practicing in the prep, as Deb was talking about. And then
is the inverse also true, though, Jordan?
The inverse is also true. So the flip side of that coin is that women are often judged very differently, particularly when they are being more aggressive or attacking or criticizing. That can be read very differently by voters and in quite like an inequitable way. So they have to also be aware of the balance overall of how they're appearing when they're making those attacks. And likability is so important.
All right. Let's do our do-overs of the day. Deb, do you want to start?
Well, I can choose Sparky or I can choose Ad out of Washington. Just tighten up, guys. That's all you have to do. And I say that both to the premier and to his team. Washington was under such scrutiny. You knew you needed to be 100% squeaky clean, playing by all the rules. It's just an unnecessary issue to have popped up. So just tighten it up, guys. We got 13 days to go. That's it.
Not like they needed that video, right?
No, it's a great video, but all they had to do is just take the partisan logo off it at the end, which I think is what they've done and reposted it. Right. So it's unnecessary. And, everybody, all pundits are saying the only person that can beat Doug Ford is Doug Ford. So keep that in mind and just be crystal clear in everything you do. Tight, tight, tight.
All right. Scott, do-over?
My do-over is kind of directed at me. Yesterday, we said, the goddamn Liberal campaign, when it comes to healthcare, they got to bring it to life. They got to actually haul patients up on stage and have them tell their personal stories. Not 2 hours later, they did. So I withdraw my do-over from yesterday. I applaud the tactic yesterday. Didn't get a ton of media, but Crombie stood on a stage. She had a guy walk up, tell the story about his emergency ward, had her candidate in Barrie, who's former head of the OMA. And I think more of that post-debate. I tried to be even more creative in the visual, tried to tug at the heartstrings as hard as possible, but good on him. I liked that approach. So yesterday wasn't a do-over, it was just a do.
Can I just say, though, on that ER doctor, he is prolific on social media and is so over the top in his partisanship. It's unbelievable. So I agree.
You should go to Sparky. That should be there should be a mandatory minimum.
You said
years
it. I didn't. You said it. I didn't. No, it's just like
no one
I agree generically with what you're saying, but that guy, as soon as I saw Bonnie had him, I was like, oh my God, couldn't you find somebody else?
So Scott, what is just to stay with this for a second, though? I agree with you. They did the right tactic in that sense, but I continue to think there's missing connective tissue between the healthcare issue and voting for Bonnie Crombie. There's some cartilage there that needs to exist that doesn't exist.
I know. And if you watch the entirety of the announcement, you will see that some of that connective tissue that we might recommend is there. I think it may be a tour issue. I think it may be a cutting away issue so that there's the old saying, roast beef it, which means if you want somebody to eat roast beef, don't set it next to lobster. So, if you're going to want people to talk about that emergency ward, well, then you have to be sure that you are colorless when it comes to talk about the Washington video. All right. Don't force the media to talk about what you want to talk about. Make it as colorful as possible. So I think it was a big step forward, but I think the tour, what we're looking at, how the picture tells a story, not just people with a winter vest on, talking about their experience, but rather trying to create a picture that goes with it. All of that stuff, that's fine tuning. But I agree with you. And as you said, then you got to come in over the top and say, and here's how, you probably think, people out there, that nobody can do a fucking thing about this. But I have news for you. actually, we can change this. We can muscle it into a place that's better if we're willing to do that more than we do other things. And I would be if I was premier.
Right. Okay, Jordan, you got a do-over?
I do. It's also healthcare related. So a couple days ago, the NDP campaign put out a little video from their war room that was attacking Crombie on the Liberal healthcare record. So you can look it up if you want, but it's basically the concept is that Liberals helped create this problem. We can't trust them to fix it. There are always going to be a lot of people, and particularly in the NDP universe, who absolutely hate it when the party attacks Liberals. But I really liked it. And I thought, though, this should have been the type of thing that we were seeing out of the war room a couple of weeks ago when it was really, really clear that Crombie and the Liberals were making this the core part of their campaign. It's an attempt to sort of swift boat them, to go after the strength of what they have at the core of their campaign as an issue, and to remind people that things maybe weren't so great last time the Liberals were in power. And I think it's a good and necessary thing to do. I wouldn't have waited necessarily to mid-campaign to do it. So a bit of another time machine one for them.
Greetings, Canadian Political Pod listener. I'm your narrator, Gary, an artificial intelligence-generated voice. Exciting and serious sounding is what we typed in the AI voiceover input field. And boom, Gary exists. Hey, do you know what's not artificial? Not even one bit? The highly influential audiences air quotes media podcasts offer to its advertisers. And I say that with all the sincerity a machine learning, data-optimized, predictive network of interconnected neural nodes can muster. Whether your ad message is on Curse of Politics, the Hurly-Burly, Hotel Pacifico, or the brand new Race to Replace, you will be reaching cabinet ministers, members of parliament, the political class, the C-suite, and corporate Canada, leading journalists, and tens of thousands of engaged Canadians. People saying this is a unique political moment is underselling it. Policy is under scrutiny. A party leader is being voted on. The Ontario election is underway. There will be a new prime minister. And then there's the guy living in the White House who calls us the 51st state. Does anyone remember another time like this? I'm instantly scouring millions of data points to answer my own rhetorical question. No, you do not. This is when you need to get your message to the decision makers. Email us at contact@airquotesmedia.com. You'll be dealing with Jill and Todd, who are real, not artificial at all people, and generally very friendly. Well, Jill is anyway. We're still deciding about Todd.
All right. Well, let's wrap this show up, this Friday edition of this show, with a Valentine or a curse. Okay, you can choose to be nice or mean. You can send out a Valentine or you can send out a curse. Jordan, I'll stay with you.
Okay, well, I guess it's like, I'm going to make it nice because it is Valentine's Day. So it's like maybe a consolation Valentine, sending this out to the federal Liberals, because tomorrow is the end of the HST holiday. Do you guys remember that? So this problem of their own creating that ended up playing a role in Freeland's departure, and despite our predictions of it being somewhat a sign of political life, was actually sort of a sign of political death. And anyway, now they get to enjoy the final portion of it, which is the part where the taxes get put back on all this stuff that they took them off. So I guess a little consolation bit of chocolate, because that's all going to get taxed now, and that's not going to be very fun for you.
Yeah. Okay, Scott.
For my Valentine's Day blessing, I'm reaching into the past and back home. My home riding of Quinte for years and years and years in the 70s, 80s, early 90s. It was held by a fellow named Hugh O'Neill. He went on to be part of David Peterson's cabinet, a wonderful guy, an unbelievable constituency representative, like to get elected.
And he gets at least one shout out like this a year on this podcast.
I loved Hugh. I learned so much from him. I really, really did. And so Huey's no longer with us, but his son David is running as the candidate in Quinte. And you would expect with these numbers that the Liberals have a snowball's chance in hell in Quinte. Watch out. David O'Neill, sending a blessing to you. That name has a lot of traction in that area.
Okay, Deb.
That's so sweet, by the way. And I remember Hugh O'Neill.
He's a great man.
Yeah, it's very sweet. So I'm going to do a Valentine because it is Valentine's Day, and it's going to be to my friends at the Toronto Star. And I feel a little bad sending this because I think Robert Benzie is one of the best journalists this province has ever seen. But their story on Sparky today was vintage Toronto Star. So my Valentine is Toronto Star, you do you, because you do it very well. But they have a lawyer quoted in the story. This comes from a lawyer who was in the room when Doug sent this message about Sparky, and they're not naming him. Like, it's so Toronto Star anti-conservative. It's unbelievable. The guy's not a victim. He's a goddamn lawyer who heard a speech in public and, you know, is speaking on the record with anonymity. And I just think that is not the best way to attack the Conservatives. Now, we're talking about it, so I guess their story is working, but the Toronto Star is the Toronto Star. Stay true to you guys.
I've always loved him. I love him a little bit less as time goes on, but I've always loved him. My Valentine, and it's a Valentine, my Valentine goes out to Chrystia Freeland, whom I'm thinking about these days because she's not going to win the leadership, and she's in the middle of a sad campaign. I've been in this campaign. I've been involved in this campaign. I've been working on this campaign where you're turning out reams of policy and you're trying to provoke debate and you're trying to establish your credentials, but the thing's already moved on. Kretsch's already going to win. Doesn't matter what you're saying. In the case of my personal experience back in 1990. So it's really, and there's weeks and weeks to go, and you want to believe, you got a reason to believe, but to go back to the core of it, Chrystia Freeland is the reason that the Liberal Party has any life in it at all right now. Chrystia Freeland is the reason that the Liberal Party is having a leadership race. If she had not resigned, Justin Trudeau would be the unresigned Prime Minister today, and the leader of the Liberal Party today, and we would be headed toward that catastrophic result. Instead, we're seeing a change in the political complexion, and we are seeing resurgence in the Liberal Party, not necessarily to the point where it's going to win an election, but it's going to live. It's going to live to fight another day. And God bless her. I really do mean that. She took a lot of courage for her to do what she did, more courage than any other member of that government had. And she did it, and it has taken us to where we are today. She's not going to reap the rewards of that. But by God, we owe her a debt of gratitude. So happy Valentine's Day, Chrystia Freeland. You're probably having a bad day, but I wish you had a slightly better day. That's our show.
You guys are just so sweet, man.
I doubt she thinks that's sweet. I doubt she goes, my God, that was sweet. I know it was intended.
She hates me, and she hates me for saying it, but I feel it genuinely.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that's a fair one.
Okay, thanks to our original sponsor, Aurea, and to our polling sponsor, Enbridge. We got through another week. Before we return on Monday, there will have been a northern debate. There will be a whole weekend full of fresh polling. There will be all kinds of stuff. So we'll come roaring back on Monday morning. But in the meantime, enjoy your weekends, you accursed, and we'll see you in a few days. Take care of yourselves.